G'day, Assassins. Welcome to Rally the Creed episode 2 here on the ones who came before. Hi, Gargudan. This is my face for once. Suppose I'm hosting today. And of course, we got the man, Colin, and we also got Finn from the partnership program here today. What's up, guys?
Hello. Thanks very much.
All right. Let's talk some AC. Where to start?
So I just want to kick off by saying massive thank you to everyone that's listened to the podcast so far, because we've had massive support from everyone in the community. And it's always hard going into the unknown. When you start a project like this, you never know how you're going to do. You never know what the feedback you're going to get, but it's really been positive. And what we've been doing from the first episode, we've been pulling it apart and getting little snippets, like 1 minute long, posting them on our social medias, and they've been doing really well and pushing people to watch the actual video. So that's really cool, because we've actually found, like, me and Michael have had like really interesting quotes, and then we're going to try like piece them all together and get like the key highlights, because what we thought would be like a half an hour long video for episode 1 turned out to be an hour and a half. That's the cool thing with this. It can go for any length of time, really. And just the more people we get on, the more passion we get. We want to get guests and everything. We want to get, just more people involved, and it's become like a social hang up for the Assassin's Creed community. But like I said, it's been a massive support from the community so far, and we really appreciate everyone who's watched it so far, and hopefully the momentum continues.
Hopefully. Let's see where everything goes.
Let's see how long we can talk for.
Absolutely.
We got to break an hour and a half now that you've set the competition.
Let's see. But where to start?
Well, what's going on at the minute, I guess, is the
So what's really going on at the minute is a massive silence in the Assassin's Creed community, and that's something that we're hoping to fill the void on a bit, because we've not heard anything about Assassin's Creed Mirage since around September last year when trailers dropped, and now we're sort of in this void where we sort of expected to have seen a bit more of the game, but Ubisoft have been so quiet. And that's why in the first episode, me and Michael were speculating that perhaps the game's been delayed until later this year. And even like projects behind the scenes that we don't know anything about. There's a Netflix show in development. There's Assassin's Creed Jade. There's all these Assassin's Creed projects, and we've not really seen anything about them. Like, we got a snippet last year with the September event, but since then there's been this silence. And that's one of the reasons for kickstarting this podcast now, when there's no news, so that we can talk about this and we can, like I say, fill the gap and get people talking about Assassin's Creed again.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I remember you did cover like how the game's possibly been delayed. It's probably is at this point. Maybe like at the end of the day, like AC games have always come out like towards the end of the year, so maybe sticking to tradition.
I still, based off a September announcement, I can't see it coming out this year. Because we usually get an E3 announcement followed by like a October, November, December release. So
E3 was like cancelled entirely this year.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like typically, so you get that June, July announcement, and then followed by 5 months max release. We got an announcement back in September, and we're approaching May now, and heard nothing more. I just can't see it coming out this year.
I mean, in terms of marketing, you'd think we'd have seen something to push people to buy this game, because people have pre-ordered off a couple images. We've seen like screenshots. I guess, are they in-game captures? I'm not sure. But
I think there are a couple of in-game captures, but yeah, mostly cinematics.
Yes, and then obviously the trailer we've had, which was impressive, but now we're hearing about issues with Assassin's Creed Mirage Collector's Edition, where it's been removed from the Ubisoft store. So those who have pre-ordered it, they're not sure if their pre-order's actually gone through, and there's no release date. So everyone who's pre-ordered is really worried. They're like, when am I getting my copy of the game? And has it gone through properly? So it's quite a strange situation for them fans.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think Ubisoft have never been like the company for delays, have they?
Well, that's full of bones.
Maybe once or two, but it's probably mostly me. But another game company I'm a big fan of, Rockstar Games, they're practically like, when they announce a date for something, that means nothing. Like, it's always getting delayed. Like Red Dead Redemption 2 was delayed, 3 times or something? Back then. It was like announced October 16 and came out 2 years later when it was set for an October 17 release. But yeah, they're the masters of always delaying. Yeah,
Yeah, but bringing out something excellent in the end.
of course.
Yeah.
Most definitely. But yeah, Ubisoft have never really been the delaying type, I suppose.
There were a couple of examples.
Watch Dogs, I think.
Yeah.
And then Far Cry 3 back in the day as well.
Skull and Bones is still
Yeah.
whenever that's releasing. The Immortals game, Immortals Phoenix Rising, that got delayed a couple of times.
I think a couple of the older Assassin's Creed games have been delayed in the past, but never for too long, really.
Yeah,
Like
it's
a
never
month,
been anything
maybe.
major with Assassin's Creed, because that's kind of their
Finally
flagship
polished it, I
series.
guess.
Yeah, a few
Yeah,
weeks
it really
at
is
most.
just like a polishing, get into the, get that game up to scratch, really. And you don't want to release a buggy game.
I think
think-
it's funny you say that because I think Unity was actually delayed by a few weeks. Speaking of buggy games, yeah,
Are either of you Doctor Who fans?
I am.
Yes.
I've seen one episode in school once, maybe, but no, I can't.
One of the things I'm really enjoying about Doctor Who marketing at the minute, even though we've not got another episode out for at least like 6 months, is that they're constantly showing the stuff that they're filming, and they're constantly revealing little tidbits of information, and it's keeping this community alive and active. And I'm really into Doctor Who, so I'm loving seeing like what the new Doctor's wearing in one episode, or what the new villain's going to look like, or whatever. But like,
I have seen this. It's cool how they are like revealing things that are probably next year at the earliest.
At the very least,
a little look at what's to come. And this is something Ubisoft could do with the Assassin's Creed TV series. Like, there's no reason they couldn't, at the very least, tell us where it's going to be, show us some costumes, build some hype about that. Because one day we're all going to be sat watching it on TV, but it's, at the minute we don't know anything about it.
I mean, it's even more than a TV series. They could start doing it with the games, even if Mirage isn't coming out this year, or if it's been delayed or whatever. They could show us some of Basim's animations. They could show us some little, environmental clips. There are just all these little things that they could do to just keep the community alive that isn't really happening, which is kind of unfortunate because it feels like a lot of people saw this great Mirage trailer and saw all the Infinite stuff that's coming, got really excited, and then however many months have passed, and everyone's going, okay, well, what's happening?
Yeah. We'll have to see, and as you say, if anything, it can only mean that the final product will be more polished or whatever. So
yeah, that's the hope with it. It's that these delays will mean all this lack of information will mean that something better comes out in the end.
It was over the summer that the UB Forward event would be correct. I mean, we're bound to see something there. Maybe
the next couple of months, I think.
Yeah, new release date, or I mean, I think you could still make an end of the year release. If not, then early 2024.
Mm.
I mean, if that's the case, and I imagine all the other Assassin's Creed projects have been delayed as well, because within a time frame, I would have thought that the Netflix TV show would have been this year. The amount of time they've spent on it by now.
Yeah,
but with delayed or in theory delayed. But yeah, they revealed it a long time ago, didn't they, on the Netflix social media accounts?
Before
a year or two ago, maybe now. It feels like forever ago.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
I remember seeing the announcement, getting what's this going to be? But we've heard nothing.
I do think with the Netflix show, what they need to focus on more, which they unfortunately didn't do with the film so much, is making it quite cohesive. So if we're going to get Infinite, which is going to be this collection of stories, that's the idea. Netflix show should sort of tie into that collection of stories, in my opinion. It needs to feel more cohesive than the film and games ever felt. I know in Origins we got a couple of hints towards what happened in the film, but then beyond that, we've not seen anything of what happened in that.
There were a few things in the film, but I suppose ultimately those were just like Easter eggs and like a little bit of fan service, really.
I think there's a lot that you could do with that idea of, I mean, Marvel's showing it, Star Wars is showing it, like that connected TV to other mediums.
Sure.
But you can do something quite interesting there. And Assassin's Creed's always been about like collective stories. So there's something there where you could.
And then the trick will be to, because I've seen some people talk about that, make it more than just fan service. Not that I really mind, but like.
Yeah, no, it needs to be like genuine. it needs to be like characters and actual stories crossing over. I mean, I'm also a big Star Trek fan, and like if you look back at Star Trek, there's always some fun stuff where it's like, oh, the Borg were introduced here, but now they're playing a role in someone else's story. That's always a fun way of doing it. If it's like the Templars start a plan in one of the games that then leads through into the show.
You mentioned Star Wars there. I remember when Andor came out a few months back, which, you know, was the most like, is this even Star Wars? People were like, Andor. And then Andor, if Dave Filoni made it, then there would be all these like Clone Wars characters and like so much fan service, but it just set off the side for what was undoubtedly something very fresh, even if it didn't catch everyone, including me, equally.
Yeah, I've not watched Andor.
Star Wars is a really good example with that, Gustav, because they are connecting all the dots with it. They're bringing characters back from all the animated stuff. They're making them live action, and even characters that they've had in the live action before, they're sort of making them more relevant now, and they're connecting through all the TV shows. Like they've got the Book of Boba Fett, they've got the Mandalorian, connecting them up, and they're just really clever with their storytelling.
Ahsoka coming and everything, and it's just going to be quite interesting. And I mean, Star Wars is getting to that point where it's not enough to just watch the main Skywalker saga. Like, you need to watch the shows and to, like, almost understand, like, see all the additional building upon that these characters go through and these events and everything that's happening.
Yeah. It's quite funny because I have quite a bit of annoyance with where Star Wars is going at the minute. But for me, Assassin's Creed was always about that, uncovering the conspiracy to it. There was always that fun of like the truth in Assassin's Creed 2, and like trying to figure out what that meant and stuff. And it feels like a lot of the modern stuff is missing that in a way that you could bring back through having multimedia connections.
It's funny you mentioned the truth. Did any of us play that and just figure it out with our own brains, or did we all rely on Google search for the results?
Community answers was Yeah, that was a big thing. Yeah.
It was never enough just here getting the in-game clue from Sean and like, you need to do this and that. What does that even mean? But no, that was definitely just an interesting, a big part of that, definitely. Although those added to that whole very like dark ambience of Assassin's Creed 2 that I love. Is that mystery and like, is anything even real?
That's it. That's sort of what the idea of this community was born out of, that intrigue, the ones who came before. It's like, who are these precursors that existed in the past and are providing messages that sort of change the future? It just really stuck with me and resonated. And that's sort of the vibe I was going with originally. If you watch some of the older videos on the ones that came before YouTube channel, we've got a song called Apple Chamber by Jesper Kid. It really does provide that intrigue and mystery. And that's what we wanted to capture in our original videos.
I remember some of those from like way back. There was the Norway theory as well, wasn't there?
Yeah,
that's
right.
Been doing this a while. Time that when was it? It was in 2014 you founded the site, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So what's that? 8-9 years ago now.
Yeah, it's almost a decade ago, and it makes me think of like how the two of us like ever even clashed, which is like kind of fun to look back on. I remember it as back in the day, I was just like sharing Assassin's Creed stuff on Twitter, probably through hashtags. You found something I wrote, and then like you followed me, but and then a while later we just started talking back and forth and like all the time. So
that's right, and I guess that's sort of how I've done it over the years. Like bit by bit, I've seen something in a person's writing or a video that has inspired me to bring them onto the team, or I've seen something and I'm like, oh, that's something we're not currently doing at the ones that came before. Like, for example, you had your podcast. It was like, we're not doing anything like that. Why don't I try and create a video team for our community and then an art team? And now it has branched into this massive team of, I think we've got 25 members currently. And each person brings something different to the team. So like Finn, for example, is quite new to the Assassin's Creed community. But when I was reading his writing, it's just the passion comes through and it's like raw emotion. So Finn's writing is very different to anyone else's on the program or the community because it really has that personal element. And like you, for example, you're creating the music, Gustav, as well. It's like everyone has something they're doing that's just so unique. And bit by bit, I've brought them all together and created this team. But like you say, it would literally just have been from someone in their little corner of the internet, doing their thing. And then I've noticed them and brought them in. And now we are this huge community on the web, and like we're doing our own thing. And that's just how we've done it.
It's come a long way for sure. Also, just from like back when like we started talking and I suppose joined the Assassin's Creed community. Like there's been so many in and outs with people, and community's seen so many changes for better or worse. And yeah, it's still going strong here, what, almost 16 years later.
That's it. And then even with our Assassin's Creed community, like we've grown to roughly 50,000 on social media platforms now. And like I remember when we had like 10 likes and like 5 followers on Twitter. Like it's grown so much.
Yeah,
like you don't see the bigger picture when you start something like this. So like you only see what you've got at that time. But then when I started this, I never thought way down the line I'd be an Assassin's Creed community ambassador for the UK, join the Mentors Guild, and have all these opportunities. I've been so lucky with Ubisoft. They've taken me to Germany, they've taken me to London for press events. I've got the opportunity to interview loads of voice actors for Assassin's Creed and just do what I love. But on a platform like this, like, it's grown like beyond my comprehension as like a 16-year-old lad on the internet with a Twitter account. Like it's crazy, really.
Yeah, and even if like the site has undoubtedly grown like much bigger in years, all that stuff you mentioned, like if I remember, happened relatively like within 2-3 years or something. Like as you said, went to Gamescom as like a star player and being invited to London for like early screenings of the movie. That was when the site was still very, very young.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about Ubisoft. They have people all over the world who are actively looking for passionate community members, and they see everything you post. So if they see something they like, they can invite you to these things. They can bring you on board. They've got these opportunities like the Star Player Program, which is a great opportunity for all these fans around the world. They get to go to these events. They get to see things early. They get game access. And just meet other community members. And it just is a great experience for them as well. And it's just cool to see that Ubisoft really do care about the community, because I've seen it more on a personal level. I recently went to London with the Assassin's Creed UK community, and then we met up with the Stance community, and then we met up with Rainbow Six Siege community as well. And we were all there for the Ubisoft Community Awards, and just seeing all these people, what they do, and it just really brings people together.
Of course.
I remember quite early on with my blogging and stuff, which is how you found me, Cole, that one of the most exciting things was when Darby McDevitt responded to one of my blogs and was like, "Hey, I really like this. I'm like, thanks for writing it." And I'm like, I never expected to hear from you. Like,
that's great.
That's brilliant.
And that's the cool thing. If you put something out on the internet, it's there for anyone to see. So like this, for example, like we don't know who's going to watch this from Ubisoft. Like loads of people could be watching it, and like that's the great thing with this podcast. It is an introduction to the community. It's like, Finn, I think this is your first time on the video in the community.
It is.
That's very exciting.
I definitely think that Ubisoft are also, I think, of the like big video game companies out there. They are in some ways they're some of the ones who like interact the most with fans, I suppose, directly, like acknowledging their work and then inviting them to stuff. I mean, there's even been people in the community, they're not like that active anymore, but they literally got jobs at Ubisoft just from starting out, like making videos for fun. And like now they're what, community ambassadors or like builders or whatever at Ubisoft officially. So it's kind of like, the
Ubisoft has seen that potential as well. And like a good example of this is White Room. So Clement, who's
I
now
was thinking of him actually. Yeah,
he's a massive inspiration in the community. He was just a community member. Yeah, Assassin's Creed Universe. That was great.
I used to narrate some of their videos and stuff. So yeah.
And childhood me was watching so many of the Assassin's Creed Universe compilation videos.
Was it? He's like a community something at like Ubisoft Newcastle or something, I think it is.
Yeah, that's right. That's great to see, because it just shows that Ubisoft have this, willingness to bring community members on board and give them a chance, which is very cool to see. And then hopefully we see a few more success stories like this, because it shows that someone who's been passionate, they've done something, like they've wanted to step into that world, and Ubisoft have opened the door for them.
Of course. Absolutely.
I mean, one of the first, it's not Ubisoft, but one of the first stories I heard was back in the day with Skyrim, a modder got a job at Bethesda, and me thinking like, wow, like you can just do this for fun, and then someone will go, yeah, we'll hire you. You can start doing it for real, and then you've got all this Ubisoft Star Player stuff and all these things that are happening. It's like, yeah, man, go for it. Like, why not? What's the worst that can happen, really?
Of course.
That's the great thing with being part of a community. It brings people together, and that, like I say, this is one of the whole points of this podcast. We are rallying the creed. We're bringing everyone together, and that's exactly what we're doing here. And within the wider community as well, like events are a great networking opportunity. You can meet all these people, and you can just get to know people and their stories. Because I always think Assassin's Creed, everyone has one core story relating to the franchise. Like, how did you get into this? Why do you do this? And has Assassin's Creed ever helped you in tough times? And I think that's a really good example, because one of Finn's most recent articles that I mentioned before was about how Assassin's Creed helped him in times of grief. And that was on a personal level for me as well, because I know that when I lost a loved one, Assassin's Creed was something that I could throw myself into, and it was just there for me. And the community as well, it was like a massive support network, but just taking my mind off things and having it there as like a backup. If you've had a bad day, you can just dive into another world, really. You can go and do something else, and it is just a form of escapism. But for others, there's that opportunity to really take your mind off things. But like I say, it's just one of them things where Assassin's Creed is there for people, and it'll always be there for people.
Of course. Makes me think, was Assassin's Creed like the first big franchise both of you got into?
Not for me. Star Wars was the first one. My dad loved Star Wars, so
Star Wars for me as well. I mean, I've been on that since I was like, what, 8 or something.
Yeah, so I was in Star Wars before Assassin's Creed existed. Like, I was obsessed,
Yeah. I mean, gaming wise, it was like the second or third one for me. My first big one was, and will always be, like, first love will always be Grand Theft Auto, I suppose. But I mean, I had always heard about Assassin's Creed from like friends who had like been playing it, and it had like intrigued me, I suppose. But when was it I started playing? It was late 2014. I like bought this box that had, what was it, AC3, Black Flag, and Liberation. And that was kind of my indoctrination. Starting
I was there from like quite earlier. I remember the experience, because every weekend me and my stepdad would go to Game. And back in the day, Game used to do pre-owned games for dirt cheap back in Britain.
Sure.
So we'd get any pre-owned game. Like, there'd always be like anything under a tenner. Like, try it out. And I got Assassin's Creed one day, and this was before 2 came out. So it was about 2008, early 2009. And I just fell in love. I was like, this is the best game I've ever played. And I remember watching Assassin's Creed 2 reveal at E3. I remember Christmas Day opening up Assassin's Creed 2.
Wow.
And then I was in. Like, that was it. Yeah.
So you've been with the franchise quite a while then, Finn?
Yeah, right from the start.
I only found you in the community, was it last year or the year before? So you've actually followed it for, what, 13 years? 12 years?
Yeah, however long it is now, yeah.
It's impressive.
Yeah, no, I used to like dabble in stuff, but I never had that passion for writing for it as much as I do now.
And that's the cool thing, because you do the writing outside of the Assassin's Creed stuff as well, right? Yes,
so I'm a journalist in real life as well. So lots of writing in my life.
Oh, for sure.
So the Assassin's Creed was more of a passion thing that I then went, this is something I just really want to write for.
That's cool.
Like, would love to do. more of. So yeah, then came through that.
And that's the great thing. Like most people who do content creation within the Assassin's Creed community, it is purely out of passion, and they just love what they do, and they do it solely voluntary. It's not
Well,
like a paid thing. It really is just out of interest.
Yeah, because my latest article on the website is with the Assassin's Creed tribute game developer, and he's building a whole game for free off his own back in his own time, and just love because he loves the series that much, and has a group of people behind him who are also doing it all for free off their own back. So there is definitely that passion there.
Just because, they love it. Fans are just dedicated. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And Gustav, how did you get into your music creation?
I suppose we could talk a little bit about that. I was actually just doing some of the last touches to it today. I suppose working towards the finish line. Yeah, how did that come about? I mean, I've always loved music more than I would care to admit at points. And the funny thing is, like, even from when I was very little, there was this guy on like Danish kids TV who'd like play with big orchestras and stuff, which I think was my first like gateway into just loving music. I like getting intrigued by it, and but I never actually learned to play an instrument. But I had like a keyboard, just whatever sounds, and it wasn't until I was 18 actually that I picked up the guitar at long last. Also, after having considered it for some years, it could be cool to play an instrument, I suppose. But yeah, then I started playing and had like been. I thought I had always loved the AC soundtracks, and then the idea just kind of came randomly in a way. Like as I wrote in that article, I played this piece one day that just came to me, and I was like, that could be fun. Let's do it. A Assassin's Creed inspired project, and I've also had some friends who like they've done Red Dead inspired instrumentals and stuff. So kind of take that concept and translate it to Assassin's Creed.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you learned to play the instruments quite late on then?
Yeah, I mean, considering that most people like they start learning at what 4, 5, or typically maybe their early teens. I mean, I did always think when I was like sometimes 13, 14, it could be fun if I could play guitar. It could be fun if I could play violin, but it was just a thought, really. Never anything that I really took seriously. And then just got to a point where I got into like more. I started listening to more acoustic guitar music, and then I was like, you know what? It's now. I want to try it. It sounds like a lot of fun. So yeah, and that was like late 2017.
Yeah. I mean, that's the cool thing with your project as well, because it's heavily inspired by the sounds of Assassin's Creed. And on your descriptions, you really go into depth about what exactly in the games inspired you, what from the music inspired you. And like you've written this whole thing about the exact moments of the game that created this spark for you to create that piece. I think it's fascinating.
I mean, as I said, the Assassin's Creed soundtracks have like, even from day one, there was always something about those. I loved listening to them in the background, and there was a lot of like just great sounds and vibes captured with a lot of them. So I wanted to tap into some of that mixed with like a few freestyle elements as well, I suppose. Like tap into other, maybe a little bit inspired by other games or like the historical time periods and whatever. But I have tried to stay as true as possible. There are also some sections where it's like melodies from the game soundtracks, just as a little tribute. Like
I find that really interesting because the one thing I never have understood is music production. I'm like, I don't get how anyone makes it. That to me is magic.
It is it can be a very advanced process, and I mean, I know how to get around as good as I can, but it's really just in my book something you got to play around with to get familiar. Yeah, you can watch tutorials and everything, but to really and there are some technicalities you should keep in mind, but other than that, it's really just there's no real recipe to it. You just got to do whatever you want to do. And sometimes the best like sound effects and stuff are the ones you accidentally create. So yeah, no, it's a fun project. I'm really excited to finally put it in the books. It'll be out in very soon, probably in a few weeks' time, unless anything changes. So it's about 25 minutes in total. So it's gonna be a lot of
Coming
fun.
up nicely, especially from the demos you released. It's sounding great.
Sure, I have made a few touches, improved them already, but yeah, they those sections kind of capture I suppose the essential parts of it. Some of the tracks. It all started with that like very medieval sounding piece. That was like I was just sitting with my guitar one day, just playing random shapes. Played this one, and suddenly I heard this whole thing in my head. Like that happens sometimes. The best melodies overall are the ones that that come when you don't even think about it. Sometimes when you're about to go to sleep, and I'll remember that in the morning. No, I don't. And that piece kind of had this like very dark vibe to it. So yeah, that is kind of how the idea for the whole project started.
And I think what we'll end up doing eventually with your music is probably turn it into, the fan videos. So we'll maybe give people like a community challenge of here's the sound to play with, and could you create like a tribute video to this sound? And then on TikTok, sounds take off. So if you are like the host of a sound, other people can pick it up and add to it. So for example, like we could have your song and then we could add like Assassin's Creed 3 gameplay to it, and then someone could overlay it and add like Black Flag to it. And eventually you end up with loads of tribute videos with your sound as like
Oh,
the
that sounds like a really cool concept. I do have in mind
go viral, like a sound or like be bounced around. And if we got all the Assassin's Creed communities, for example, to do a tribute video with your sound, we could really pass it around. And who knows, Yes the Kid might hear it.
Maybe. I mean, that definitely sounds cool, like something to even build upon it further. But I definitely had in mind myself just to like add some kind of visual, but that's probably just world ambience, really, like no characters or gameplay, just ambience.
I'd love for people to play the game on mute and just listen to your music.
Oh yeah, that could be fun because those tracks that are meant for, like as ambient tracks, just playing in the background always added something to the game. That's for sure. All right, welcome to the second half of this episode. I just had to go to another room. Please excuse the terrible backdrop, but oh well, it'll do. All right, where do we come from? We came from the music stuff there.
Yes, we were saying about what inspired your musical creations. And as it happens, I've just gone on Twitter and seen that Assassin's Creed Twitter account has posted about the Symphonic Adventure, which is the new name for the Assassin's Creed Symphony. So perfect timing for them to promote in that event.
Some of you guys went to that a few years back in London, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was really good. I think that was my 23rd birthday. And as it happened, it tied in with the event in London. And Ubisoft took all the Assassin's Creed community members who were before Mentors Guild. It was Rally the Creed, as it happens, which inspired the name of this podcast. We were all members of Rally the Creed Community Initiative. They brought us all down to London, took us on an open tour bus of London, and then we had the symphony on the night. We had dinner with Alexios's voice actor. We had dinner with him, and then we all went to the symphony, and it was unreal. It really was
such a that. Speaking of that, we talked about earlier, Ubisoft caring so much about their fans and organizing all these fantastic events for them.
That's one of the things that will just stick with me for life as well. Because as soon as we got there, and then he just walks in, it was so crazy.
Is that the?
So you weren't expecting him?
No, it wasn't anything we knew about. And then as we went to the community meetup as well, he walked at the very end. We've got a video on our YouTube channel of him walking in, Michael Antonikos, and he just walks in, and everyone's like, just like in shock. That is Alexios.
That's so cool.
And he's so great as well. He's such a lovely guy.
That's so cool. No, but that sounds cool with like the symphony concert returning. That makes me think, have you guys, that was like the Swedish orchestra or something? They made like they played the Black Flag theme once. It wasn't
I
like
think I've seen a
official
video.
Ubisoft or anything, but they played it and it sounds spectacular. And Brian
So
Tyler
good.
commented on the video and was like, I approve of this.
More of this.
Yeah, no, it sounds so magical. I don't think they've done Assassin's Creed music, but like the Danish National Orchestra, they've done like concerts with just like other video game music before as well, like doing the Halo theme, doing the GTA 4 theme, and such,
It's
and
funny
other
because
ones.
the Assassin's Creed ambient soundtrack, especially Assassin's Creed 2, that's stuff that stuck with me for life.
Yeah,
Like to this day, you could play any ambient soundtrack from Assassin's Creed 2, and I'll get like butterflies. It just excites me. There's something about it that's stuck with me more than any other soundtrack I can think of.
for sure. It's definitely, I think, for me, my second favorite. Um, because there's so many interesting sounds, and that's also what I try and tap a bit into with like my AC2 inspired track. Because the funny thing is, it's set in like the Renaissance, so you expect a lot of like traditional Italian instruments, but a lot of that soundtrack is actually very electronic. Um,
I read an interview with Jesper Kidd about this because he said that he loved the idea of modern people reliving the past. So in that
yeah,
essence, he wanted to electrify Renaissance music. So he
That's cool.
modernizes it, and that's how that kind of blend came about. That electric guitar mixed in with old flutes and whatever.
yeah,
And he really found the perfect combination of both because he has got the modern elements in there as well because he did all the modern day music as well as the in the past. So he sort of found
Mm.
the balance and sort of got a bit of the electric, got a bit of the precursor stuff, and it's really mixed it around. Like if you look at the Assassin's Creed ambient stuff that's not on the soundtrack, like you were mentioning, Finn, that stuff in particular is really chilling.
yeah.
Yeah, I went to Venice a couple of years back because of Assassin's Creed 2. I'd always wanted to go.
Like
So
walk around the
pre-COVID,
streets listening to it, or
yeah,
oh,
headphones in, listening to all the ambience, just going, "This is the best thing in the world."
I did the exact same thing in the real life Monteriggioni ones. I walked around listening to Leonardo's inventions.
Yeah,
The funny thing
Love that.
is, no, you guys, you had only been to Rome, right, Cole?
Yeah, I proposed in Rome.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Very
I'm so
special
what a
speechless.
place.
romantic.
Yeah. No, it was like when we were on a family trip in Italy some years ago, we went to the real life Monteriggioni in Tuscany.
Nice.
The funny thing is how much smaller that is in real life. It's like, I don't know, it's not very big, and the town itself is really just this like weapons museum and like a few cafes and like a tiny hotel. That's it.
Do either of you follow overly sarcastic productions on YouTube?
Can't say it rings a bell.
They're a
No.
history YouTube channel, but one of the guys there is a big Assassin's Creed fan. He does like breakdowns of how accurate Assassin's Creed is and how the cities style up. And I think it was him I saw go like, "Yeah, Monteriggioni, they just made that up.
They just
Like,
call it freestyle.
there's no historical basis for that. They just chose a village and made it their own."
Yeah, for sure. But like the location itself was, I suppose, as good as can be, like, Tuscan Highlands and stuff.
Yeah,
But like the town itself, they 100% freestyled.
yeah,
So
that's kind of what I got.
there's no auditory crypt underneath it then in real life.
Yeah. That's funny because like with some of the other cities, like they've actually done an okay job scale wise. Like, sure, it's a little
Yeah.
scale down, but you walk around central Rome, for example, and it's actually not that everything's within walking distance, same as in game.
I I had that with Venice where I was like, actually, I know where I am. I've played this. And then the kind of the reverse with Assassin's Creed Syndicate, because obviously I live in England, I've been to London countless times. I was like, oh, I know where I am. And I
Yeah.
could guide myself through the city. And I was like, actually, this is a really well made map of London. Obviously, there are alterations and stuff. But I was like, I
There
actually
are
could navigate
definitely,
this.
and like over the last year's time, London has kind of become my second home. So I know it much better, and that's why going back to Syndicate now is so much more fun, just because I know the names of everything. And like
Yeah,
for the area they tried to capture, they did an all right job, like trying to scale it down and such.
I remember one of my favorite cafes in London is in Syndicate. You can go to the place, and I
Wait,
was
which one
like,
is that?
"This is wild!" Like I just like I was walking down the street, and I went, "Oh, I like a cafe down here." And I went there, and there was a little table set up outside the building, and I went, "Oh,
This is where I sit in the cafe in real life.
yeah, exactly, yeah, like, this is
That
a
makes
real
me
place."
that reminds me, one of the when we went to Florence, me and my family some years ago, like on the last night there, I decided to have ice cream on the bench that Ezio dies. Like approximately.
Wow.
Yeah, just like outside the big Duomo and such.
Hell of a tribute
Yeah.
to the big man.
That's the thing
On
about
my
going to Italy for any AC fan. It's only, oh, I've been there. Oh, I've been there. I've been there.
I bet I could climb that if I tried.
Yeah. And anyone you
I know
with,
how to do it.
shut up about that stupid game. Be in the know. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the great thing with Florence as well, because as you're walking around, it is to scale. Like the game does feel like you're walking into a place that you've been before, especially if you go somewhere high up looking down and you sort of recognize all the landmarks. Like they're in the positions you remember. And like you can just navigate that city purely off playing AC for the last 10, 15 years.
Most definitely.
Going into St. Mark's Basilica in Venice, I was like, this is weird. There was a real, like, surreal moment that occurred. I was like, I know this place. I know this place so well in my head. And yeah, I've never actually been and walking around it now. I'm like, I could tell you so much about this building.
Yeah. And that's it with like the games mostly set in the cities there. They're so up to date. I feel
They
like
do a
more
great job.
AC3 and 4 prioritize that less, if that makes sense. Even if there are real life buildings and such, it wasn't about that, if that makes sense, just because of the larger setting and stuff. And certainly there was all these countryside maps as well and such.
Same with the new RPG stuff. There's not that. I mean, there are obviously those moments of it, but there's much
Yeah.
less. I mean, I remember Doncaster, my hometown, is in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And going there, and I was like, this is not all Doncaster's like. And Lincoln, where I live now, is also in Valhalla, and there was a lot of similarities, but I was like, they've not captured it in the same way they would have previously.
I felt that with the river raids in Assassin's Creed Valhalla because I live in Chester and it just felt like a copy and paste job with the river. So you go
Yeah,
down the River Dee, which I'm used to, but in this, it just felt like every other river in the game. And then you get off at the fortress, Diva Vixa, which is like the big fortress, the Roman fortress of Chester. But it just felt like every other one in the game. It didn't feel like it had its own characteristics or personality at all. Like, there was nothing memorable about it. It was just another place to visit on a map, get some loot, and then move on to somewhere else, which was disappointing because there are characteristics and obviously, I don't know what it looked like back then, but to me, it just looked like everything else in the game. It didn't really stand out. Whereas all the landmarks in the previous Assassin's Creed games, like way in the past, you would know the building from the other ones in the game, and like you could even tell from the brickwork it was different. But in this, it just felt like the assets had been moved across.
Yeah.
yeah. I think
Makes
there's
me
a lot of
makes me think like after Mirage, should it perhaps return to like being set up further in history to like where cities and such are recognizable and inspired by their real life counterparts? If that makes sense.
I
I
wonder if
think
they'll do
there's
that with Baghdad. I think that's probably where they're going to go because there's a lot of interesting historical monuments out there. You know,
Definitely.
there's a
And
lot they could do with it
I've
in
always
terms of
thought
history.
we've never really had a game set in the 17th century, the 1600s. And is that because what, that's a tame period in history or definitely not? I mean, there's so much stuff. If anything, like the expansion of, I don't know, slave empires, because that's when all
Yeah.
that stuff took off. Um, and that's when the British colonized like America and all that stuff. So
One of
much
the games
potential.
that I always wanted was how the British created colonies in Australia and the prison camps. I think that would be really interesting.
I've always thought that kind of like Connor and the Native American touch, having like an Aboriginal touch could be really cool. Having like a boomerang as your weapon and like a stealth weapon. Yeah, that was like the late 1788, I think it was. That the
Yes.
British colonized Australia.
I did see there was a show years ago. I can't remember what it's called, but it was all about it. It was really interesting. I remember just watching that and thinking this would be perfect for an Assassin's Creed TV series. So maybe they'll do that. That'd be cool if they're listening.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that time period, like this late 1600s, 1700s, is the one that's most ripe with potential. Also because of what was happening at the time, in the world and in Europe and everywhere. Like it's the Age of Enlightenment, as it's called.
Yeah, this is very much Finn's area of expertise on our website. So he
Yeah.
does the
It's also
imagining an Assassin's Creed elsewhere.
one of my
What if-
favorite time periods in history because so much stuff happened.
See,
So-
personally, my dream Assassin's Creed game is Mongolian rules China, which is
That's
13th into 14th century.
Genghis
Um,
Khan era. Or
Kublai, his grandson, that's where I would base it. So Genghis took over a lot of the places. He's the guy who raided and conquered, but then Kublai was a couple generations later left to make it work. And I think that's a really interesting time period to explore where you've got this guy who's like, okay, I've inherited all of these lands, but there's no real government established and there's no real functioning to it. How do I make it work and bring order to it? Meanwhile, you can play as an assassin who goes, actually, you don't have any real claims to these lands just because your grandfather pillaged and claimed them. And so I think that's a really interesting conflict to place it in.
of course, I've always said that like if I had my dream game, it will kind of be, I suppose, the third chapter in the North American saga, like a game that kind of returns like to I suppose wraps up Connor's, Shay's, and maybe even Arno's stories all in one, if that makes sense.
I
That'd
still
be
think
cool.
it's a missed opportunity to not put Connor and Shay into Unity. It
Yeah.
just feels like it
If
was all
anything,
there.
let them have a face off because I could imagine that like in the 1790s, a little older, but I suppose no less deadly Shay, he like went on a revenge crusade throughout the colonies, I suppose, to kind of retake it and kind of just cross off the controlling assassins one by one.
Definitely.
Aveline
That would
included,
be
maybe.
mission from Haytham. Haytham tasked him with removing the assassin brotherhood and presence in America and one by one take them out. So there's actually a big time jump between the end of Assassin's Creed Rogue and the start of Unity. So Shay becomes, what is it, like, I don't know, 10, 15 years older in that time space. So
He's
it's that
like
big jump.
40
I think it's
something.
more. Yeah.
And a bit like Star Wars with the Great Purge of Mandalore, it's like it took like a long time. These things don't happen overnight. So I imagine Shay was one of the ones responsible for removing the assassin presence over there.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine
Personally,
that Assassin's Creed 3 ends there in the mid 1780s. Connor has some years, kind of. Isn't it canon that Connor had a daughter, actually?
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that could be the perfect thing. I always imagine then Connor and Shay, they have like this massive face off, but only thing it does is leave them both too wounded to fight. And then they start training their kids to continue the fight.
See,
I'm sure.
personally, if I was to tell that story, I would have Shay have retired and given it up and saying, like, I'm not sure whether what I did was right. And then Arno faces him and goes to kill him in revenge for his father and sees this now man who's got a child and is in the same position Charles Dorian was when Shay killed him. And Arno's looking at his child as he's about to kill Shay and thinking, actually, are we just repeating the cycle? Maybe we should just leave it here. And Shay accepts that he did what he did, but maybe it wasn't the best choice, and he doesn't know whether it was right now. Because one of my favorite parts at the end of Rogue War is he says, like, he talks about the creed, and he's got a new creed, and there's that sense to me that like there's a bit of hypocrisy to it, that they're both the same creeds in a way, and he's just been killing people like for changing like blue versus red in Halo. Like he's just changed colors really more than he's done any real ideological or genuine change.
At that point, Shay would be what? He would be 60 something, but would that mean he hung up the sword? Like, I'll tell you, he fought all the way till he was like 70, wasn't it?
I can imagine him still being like a capable fighter.
I'll tell you, he got really old for his age overall. And at that time when people like 25 was considered old.
Yeah.
I think Altair is the oldest character we play as. I'm sure you play as Altair when he's like 92.
Yeah. When he dies there in the library, he's 92.
Yeah.
Maybe Pieces of Eden make you older, let you live for longer. I mean, they do for Cassandra, so.
And his son, I don't remember his name, but he's like 60 or something.
Darim?
That's probably him. Yeah.
Well, that would also quite nicely tie into my ideal Mongolian game because Altair's son kills Genghis Khan and befriends Niccolo Polo, who's Marco Polo's father, who was famously lived with Kublai for decades. So you could have that whole like little tie-in together, nice little neat bow thing.
For sure. You're gonna have Ubisoft ringing you up. Can you please join the Ubisoft writing team?
I would write that in a second. Like you call me and I'm there. Give up everything.
Yeah.
So
Makes
good.
me think, just to tap into, I remember we mentioned the Netflix show earlier. Would that be like stories that would be ideal for that show? I suppose kind of like Chronicles, I guess, these smaller historical events, or what are we expecting for that show, really?
I'd quite like an animated show. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if it's live action or not. I quite like an animated show. I think that because I think you could do that kind of Chronicles.
Yeah.
Is it what's the Star Wars one where they give it to different animation studios to tell their own story? Star Wars Visions.
Yeah.
That's coming out.
I could imagine something like that would be really fun and interesting.
Yeah.
You hand it off to different animation studios across the world and you let them do a little tale of their own cultural history.
It was an interesting concept, the Visions, and Volume 2 is coming here in a few weeks, I think it is. Kind of like these they weren't non-canon, the stories, really, but just kind of these...
I thought they were canon. I mean, I might be wrong. Again, I've kind of dropped off Star Wars.
Like,
but
these different styles of stories, and they were obviously so inspired by anime and Japan, and I only watched them in Japanese, actually.
Wow.
Even though I'm not much of an anime guy. But yeah.
Well, the only reason I know about Visions is
there were some cool concepts in it. That's for sure.
The new season, they're having an episode directed by the British animation studio Aardman, who did Wallace and Gromit. If you've ever seen those, so they're doing a Star Wars episode for that, and I'm really interested to see what they do with that. I think that's quite a fun, quirky little thing. Yeah. But something like that with Assassin's Creed, I think could work really well. Just sort of handing it off and letting a bunch of different people.
They're sort of doing that with have you seen the graphic novel Assassin's Creed Visionaries that's coming out? That is one where they've recruited loads of artists from around the world to create non-canon stories, and it's now on a Kickstarter campaign.
I've not seen that.
Yeah, that's been running on Twitter recently. It only got announced last week.
I did even. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say I must have missed that, but yeah, sorry, go on.
It was just I watched a video recently, actually, suggesting that in Assassin's Creed that could probably be related to First Civilization mumbo jumbo, but that there actually might be several timelines, which could serve as a great excuse for, I don't know, doing these non-canon stories.
Well, I think because in
a different universe, in a different timeline.
In Origins, those optional First Civ temples you can go to.
Oh yeah,
they talk about how like actually the Isu could time travel or alter timelines. It's all a bit confusing, First Civ nonsense as it's always been.
Isn't that what it's called?
Like the Nexus. Yeah, I think it is.
To Ezio and.
Well, you could play within that realm of like maybe they did. Or maybe this is just an Isu prediction for what the future could be. One of the strands that Desmond talks about in Valhalla.
And this is very much like a Doctor Strange scenario where it's like this is one possible outcome in a multiverse of opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I really like Tyranny of King Washington. the Assassin's Creed 3 DLC.
for sure.
I'd love to see more stuff like that, where it's like, what if this major piece of history just happens slightly differently? How does that end up turning out? What if the American government went a different way? How would that,
I actually always imagined what something like that could have been like in, let's say, a Brotherhood setting, kind of like tap into some of the dark mysteries of like the Vatican and stuff. And like, kind of, if you guys know Angels and Demons, the book and the movie, kind of that universe that like taps into what the four elements and I suppose Catholic mythology, let's call it that. Like, let's say like our main characters were granted powers like fire or whatever, kind of like Connor is gifted the animal powers.
See, I the one thing I didn't like about Tyranny of King Washington was Connor's powers thing. I would much rather just see a normal Assassin's Creed tale, but altered history slightly.
Like a what if scenario or a
what if in history scenario? So like what? I don't know.
I love that aspect of it, and I also quite like, I suppose, Native American beliefs and like that culture. So I found it quite cool that like he literally becomes his spirit animal. Yeah.
Have you guys seen The Man in the High Castle?
I have not, but that would be a good style of really Assassin's Creed story.
Yeah, it's really interesting because that's the scenario where Germany and Japan teamed up together to win World War II, and the whole TV show is set with that being like the dominant timeline. And then there are like other timelines. So like the one we know and we live in would be like an alternate timeline, and they sort of like cross over into each other's timelines. It's really interesting.
Oh, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, they get a videotape through, like it falls through the cracks of dimensions or whatever that shows our universe where we won the war. Hitler fell.
That actually sounds pretty cool.
Recommend.
But no, there's so many options for sure in terms of, I suppose, alternate timeline stories. But would that be something for the Netflix show? Or what do you guys want to see that
might be confusing for a Netflix show. I think Netflix will look to get the Assassin's Creed fans that already exist, but also appeal to a new, like, I guess, caliber of audience. So people are used to...
They need to popularize it. I think that's the thing. Yeah. Like it's popular within gaming, but is it popular? Yeah. It's not popular outside of that. My girlfriend knows nothing about Assassin's Creed.
Yeah. How does it appeal to more people as a franchise?
I mean, take it and kind of make it appeal to the non-gaming audience, I suppose. I mean, I suppose speaking of like contemporary shows, The Last of Us succeeded with that. I don't know if you guys watched that.
I've not seen it, but I know it's very popular.
Yeah. And I never played the game, being an Xbox man, but I knew bits and pieces. But that definitely worked, and I think it kind of breaks the video game adaptation curse.
Definitely. Well, Assassin's Creed could very easily do a historically accurate Game of Thrones type thing. It could really take on that style if they wanted to. There's a lot of, if they want to make it more popular outside of gaming, just tell a really good, grounded historical story.
Yeah, I mean,
so like a Vikings thing, not that Vikings would be the idea of it, but like the Vikings TV show, that is really grounded, gritty. Like it really does hammer home the history.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that.
There are a lot of options for the Netflix show, I suppose, but it's kind of, what does it want to do? Does it want to? I don't know. I the idea of it continuing the movie crossed my mind once, but. Is there be a purpose with that, or would it be?
I think they've forgotten the movie ever happened. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Would it be making these like chronicle like secondary stories just to build the universe? Yeah, what's it going to be?
I don't know.
It makes me curious. If it hypothetically was, who would you say makes for a better live action Edward Kenway? Chris Hemsworth or Charlie Hunnam, who's like a fan favorite choice as well.
What about Matt Ryan, the actor of Edward Kenway?
If he dyed his hair blonde, maybe?
Yeah, he's the
I'm just thinking in terms of looks. I always thought Hemsworth, but apparently Charlie Hunnam is like the fan favorite.
I think if we're gonna go live action with it, I wouldn't want to see them retelling a story we've seen in the games. I wouldn't want to see
most
Edward
definitely
O'Connor.
not.
I'd want a separate thing
for sure,
entirely.
for sure. But absolutely,
I'd
that's what I'm hoping to see
Charlie
myself, and what I think they're gonna do. But let's say there was
Yeah.
a flashback sequence to this and this assassin, something we have never seen. They could do sections with like characters we know. But
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
But I don't want them to go silly with the castings. So I'm worried they bring someone on who isn't like the character. So, for example, in the Assassin's Creed Chronicles game where they had someone else voice Ezio, and it just didn't feel right. For example, like we don't want like castings that aren't on board. So, like The Last of Us is a good example of this. They were fantastic with the castings, but if they did get someone who shouldn't be cast in that role, for example, like it just doesn't feel natural.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing I think there is with something overall is that you have a character who is animated and is voiced by this person, but then doing a live action where it's someone else that can falter. Ahsoka, for example, like she's my girl, and like even if it's an animated character, Ashley Eckstein is kind of the only one who can properly play her. So in a way, the new live action Ahsoka we have, it with a different voice and such, it just doesn't entirely feel like the same person, if that makes sense.
I guess it's a lot older. So
Yeah, she's older, but if anything, like, having Ashley Eckstein's voice dubbed over that would just make it feel more at home, I suppose.
I think that's too awkward in terms of filming.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I doubt that would work.
Of course,
practically speaking, yeah.
There is just something about blurring those lines. So as you said, Ezio, like that's Roger Craig Smith, period.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't ever take that from Roger Craig Smith. Even if you do it live action, just get him in. He is Ezio.
Yeah. Give him some contact and like a nice wig and yeah.
I don't care. Leave him as he is. Just like
yeah.
If it's Roger Craig Smith there, that's Ezio in my head. I don't care what he looks like. That's just him.
For sure.
I feel like Charlie Hunnam would do a good job with an Edward Kenway role.
Yeah.
I could see him in it, yeah.
Yeah, there is because
I've met Matt Ryan and he's very passionate about Edward Kenway. And like he's first thing he said to me was, "Are we all enjoying that game I was in with the best assassin?"
He is the best assassin, so I can't really argue with him, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's interesting what options there could be for if it ever was, those maybe small live action segments. That makes me
wasn't Arno in the Assassin's Creed movie?
Yes.
Very briefly, he made an appearance.
Projection of him, and I think it was Yusuf Tassim as well. Isn't that his name from Revelations?
Yeah.
And there were a lot of Easter eggs. There was also like this weapons department with like the cane swords and Ezio smoke bombs.
Well, I know a character from Liberations, which I admittedly have never played, is meant to be in it as well, or one of his descendants.
Yes,
yeah, Baptiste.
Baptiste, the witch doctor. A lot of this is deleted scenes, but some of it makes it into the actual movie. But the problem with the AC movie was a lot of it was chopped away. Because I remember going to the preview event where it was before editing and it was a lot better than what we got, unfortunately. They chopped away so much of it.
I know people who've read the novelization of the movie, which is obviously based on earlier drafts of the script, where they're like, this is a much better story than what we got.
It's heartbreaking. It really is.
That's interesting. I mean, I haven't. I should probably rewatch the movie. It's on Disney Plus, so I haven't watched in a while, and it's something I remember is actually okay, but nothing too memorable.
I was very disappointed. Unfortunately, it definitely didn't hit it as I thought it would. I love that director. Michael Fassbender is one of my favorite actors.
Sure.
I was like, this is going to be great, and then I came out thinking, okay.
Yeah, I still fall into the category of people that actually like the movie. I think it's really cool. I just think they had a few lore discrepancies with it. Like the Templars don't know about the Apple of Eden and they're not really convinced it exists. There's just a lot of things where I'm like, they already know this, and it's like if that's Alan Rickman, then he's already done this. He's already done all
Was
the
it they
stuff.
say in the film? Alan Riken?
Yes,
Mispronounce it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just add it to the list of problems. I mean, obviously there were problematic lore errors in it, which frustrated us diehard Assassin's Creed fans. But in terms of being like an interesting movie, like it had enough there for me, like in terms of building an assassin brotherhood in modern day and in the past. But like I say, a lot of it was chopped away, and you can actually watch the deleted scenes. And one of the characters that sticks with me was a young girl who
It was
Cal
completely,
meets in the
yeah.
facility. She was totally chopped away from the movie, which I think is very harsh on the actress because she'll have spent days filming, I'm sure. But they chopped her away, and she actually added to the story. She was an ancestor of Maria, I think it was.
Oh, of the woman in the past.
Yeah, and I remember just watching all the deleted scenes and just being like, that should have been in the movie, that should have been in, and they've taken it away. And now it's like a good example of this is what they did with the Snyder Cut
Hmm.
and how that movie feels incredibly different to what we originally got.
Yeah. It's all made in the editing, isn't it?
And it connects everything. It's like the second version of the movie just explains so much. And like, it's a shame we're never going to get a second version of Assassin's Creed because people watched it and are like, oh, that's flopped at box office and it just wasn't great. But like, I know deep down they had a lot of, people working on that movie who were really passionate. I mean, the amount of effort that went into the weapons, for example, like we mentioned, you see them on screen for like a second. But the guys who made them weapons, they really put their heart and soul into crafting the exact replicas from the games.
Speaking of, I don't know if you guys watched the movie, but my shared X-Men, there was at the end of one of the X-Men movies, Apocalypse, they designed these beautiful costumes for the characters. It was so reminiscent of like their classic comic book costumes, never to be seen again. And after that, the Foxverse was done for anyway. After
Disney carried on growing their monopoly and bought
Dark
out more
Phoenix
studios.
was whatever the hell that was. Yeah. I mean, we did have Logan though, which is easily one of the best comic book films of all time. So, and Deadpool.
I just don't want people to see the TV series and be like, oh, well, this is like the movie was, and be like, oh, well, all Assassin's Creed transmedia that falls under the category of live action isn't worth watching. All that's worth doing with Assassin's Creed is to play the games, and I think that would tarnish the brand a bit, where people would they'd go on Disney Plus, for example, and be like, oh, there's the movie, it's got this rating, it's not worth watching. And the TV show as well, if that flops as well, I don't know how many more of these projects are going to continue with if this dies. They're just going to solely focus on the games if this doesn't do very well.
If they want the TV show to succeed, get Christine Golden, who wrote Assassin's Creed Heresy, to come in and show in it. Because Assassin's Creed Heresy is possibly the best story Assassin's Creed's ever produced. So just let her lead it.
It really is.
Hear something about it fairly soon. This TV show, like if it's still a project that's in the go. So,
from what I'm hearing recently as well, all the recent Assassin's Creed novels have been particularly strong. So they're definitely worth reading as well.
I've not read anything since Heresy, but yeah, I mean, I always found the novels to be really good.
Yeah,
like genuine highlights. So
maybe I should read some more of those. That was something my mom found at like a yard sale once, like the Renaissance one, and I've heard some of the other ones like are good, like kind of prequel books almost, like for Black.
Heresy's excellent as its own standalone story.
Even though I'm not much of a reader, so maybe that could be an excuse. Yeah.
If you're a fan of 3, I would also say read Forsaken.
For sure.
Which is Haytham's journals.
Right.
The only problem I have with Forsaken is some of it feels a little bit different to Assassin's Creed 3, almost like clashes with the canon story we see in the games, but it is definitely worth a read. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, same with Unity. I think there are a few clashes, but the Unity book is Elisa's journals. Is it Elisa?
Where
Yeah.
she meets Haytham's sister.
Yeah, she goes to the Kenway ancestral home and stuff. And
It's really cool. There's some
Yeah.
funny things in that one too.
yeah, I think some of those books are spectacular.
I think we've covered a lot of good stuff now. Is there anything to add, like here, in the end for now?
I think just to conclude, just so everyone knows, we are still planning on rotating the hosts every time we do these podcasts. So that sort of sets it apart from other podcasts out there, and also the fact that we've got video too. But each time we're going to rotate, so it's a different person within our Assassin's Creed community, the ones who came before. And then we may even get to a point where we can get guests hosting it as well. So if you want to take part, if you want to be involved, get in touch. We are looking for guests. So we just want to make this as big as possible and turn it into like a social place for everyone, just discuss Assassin's Creed. And there aren't that many podcasts out there right now, but this is one that we hope remains active and, like I say, becomes like a home of community discussion.
I've enjoyed this for sure. As I said, like compared to Corridor, I also do, which is a much more like, I suppose, structured concept, and there's also like a good amount of editing going on for those episodes. Like I cut out a few like unnecessary parts and such. So this is like quite chilled. Just yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
And if everyone who's listening wants a guest host who's from Ubisoft, just tweet at them. Just tweet at them a lot.
Yeah, I don't know how much they're allowed to say though.
I doubt they'll be able to give us any scoops, but just a chat about the games.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Or Christine Golden, so I can just praise Assassin's Creed Heresy for however long I have.
We would love that, and that shows the potential we've got for this. Like, we don't know how big it's going to grow to, but going off the numbers we've seen, like, I mean, there's really positive feedback as well. So we're just hoping to make this like a cool place for the Assassin's Creed community to come together, and anything's possible. And we've got the backing of our Assassin's Creed community social media accounts as well. So we'll just keep pushing it and getting people interested.
Of course, we'll just have to see how it all plays out. But this has been fun for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. But if that's it, then it was a great talk, and everyone who's been watching or listening, thanks for doing so. And of course, stay tuned here on the site for when more of these episodes come out. Links to everything is in the description below. So yeah.
So make sure to follow my Twitter specifically.
That's it. Otherwise, then take care, Assassins, and keep the community what it is. Until next time.